You know, your brain is the most powerful tool you'll ever own, but here's the catch. It doesn't come with a user's guide. So today, we're going to write a really important chapter, all about one of its most vital functions, how your brain actually makes a memory stick. Let's dive right in.
So why is it that some memories seem to be etched into our brains forever, while others just vanish? We've all been there, right? You can somehow remember every single word to a song from 10 years ago, but you can't for the life of you recall the important points from an article you read yesterday. Well, the answer to this whole mystery comes down to one crucial first step, a process called encoding.
The best way to think about encoding is like hitting the save button for your mind. It's the process where your brain takes in an experience, everything you see, hear, or feel, and converts it into a format that it can actually store. And here's the bottom line. If you encode something poorly, you just won't remember it. It's really that critical.
Now, what's so fascinating is that your brain doesn't just have one way of doing this. It's more like it has a dual-lane highway for getting information locked into your memory.
So in one lane, you've got automatic processing. This is all the stuff you remember without even trying. You know, like the route you took to get home or what you had for lunch today. It's totally unconscious and it feels effortless. But the other lane, that's effortful processing. This is for the heavy lifting. It requires your full undivided attention and some real conscious work. Think about studying for a big exam, learning a new language, or trying to memorize a password. Okay, so since that effortful processing takes real work, let's open up the toolkit. We're going to look at some incredibly powerful strategies you can use to make all that effort count and build stronger, way more durable memories.
All right, let's try a little experiment right now. You're about to see a string of letters on your screen. I'm going to give you exactly 5 seconds to memorize all of them. Are you ready? Go.
Yeah, pretty tough, right? I'd bet it was almost impossible. And that's because your brain was trying to process 18 completely separate random bits of information. That's just way too much for it to handle at once. But what if there's a trick?
Now take a look at those exact same letters. By grouping them or chunking them into familiar patterns, that chaotic string of 18 items suddenly becomes just a few easy, manageable groups. And just like that, it's a piece of cake. That's the power of finding meaningful patterns.
This amazing technique is called chunking, and honestly, it's one of the most effective tools you have for your memory. It's simply the act of taking individual pieces of information and grouping them together into larger, more meaningful units.
And we can even take chunking a step further by using hierarchies. When you organize information from these really broad concepts down to the nitty-gritty specifics, you're basically creating a mental roadmap. This structure helps your brain not just file the info away, but actually find it again super easily when you need it.
Okay, here's another incredibly powerful tool. It's a mnemonic device called the method of loci, but it's way better known as a memory palace. This technique is literally ancient. We're talking used by Greek orators, and it works because it taps into your brain's amazing spatial memory.
So here's how it works. Let's say you need to memorize a grocery list. You'd mentally walk through a place you know, like the back of your hand, like your kitchen. Then you would vividly imagine placing each item in a specific spot. You put the milk on the table, the bread right next to the sink, the eggs on the stove. Later, to recall the list, you just take a mental stroll through your kitchen and see all the items right where you left them.
So we've covered some awesome techniques for how to encode information. But what about when? Well, it turns out that the timing of your learning can be just as crucial as the method you're using. Take a look at this. Leslie, Leanne, and Nora all studied for the exact same amount of time, 4 hours total. But look at how they did it. Leslie spread her studying out over 8 short half-hour sessions. Nora, on the other hand, crammed it all into one marathon 4-hour block. The result? Leslie got an A, Nora got a C. What is going on here?
The answer is something called the spacing effect. When you spread out your learning, you force your brain to work a little harder to recall the information each time, and that effort is what strengthens the neural connections. Cramming, on the other hand, just creates these shallow, flimsy memories that fade really, really fast.
You can think of it like this. Cramming is like building a sandcastle. Sure, it goes up fast, but it washes away just as quickly. Spaced practice is like laying bricks. It takes more time, but you're building something that's actually going to last. The lesson here is crystal clear. Don't cram, space it out.
Let's talk about one more really interesting quirk of our memory. Have you ever been introduced to, say, a whole group of people at a party and later you realize you can only remember the name of the very first person and the very last person you met? Yeah, there's a reason for that.
It's called the serial position effect, and this graph shows it perfectly.
Our ability to remember things in a list is way stronger for the items at the very beginning. That's called the primacy effect, and the items at the very end. That's the recency effect. All that stuff in the middle? Well, that's where things tend to get a little fuzzy.
And you see this everywhere. You remember the opening band and the encore at a concert. In a presentation, you remember the hook and the final takeaway. This is a super powerful principle you can use to your advantage. If something is important, make sure it's at the beginning or the end.
So what's the big takeaway from all of this? Well, these aren't just abstract ideas. They are real, practical tools you can start using today to actively shape what you remember and, in the end, what you learn and who you become.
So let's recap your toolkit. First, chunk information into meaningful groups. Then, organize it into hierarchies. Use cool mnemonics like the memory palace to create vivid, unforgettable connections. Always space out your learning for long-term results. And finally, be smart about the serial position effect. Put the important stuff first or last. And that really leaves us with one final big thought. The process of encoding, it's an active choice. You are the one who decides what gets your attention and effort. So if our memories truly make us who we are, our skills, our knowledge, our stories, then the real question is, by choosing what you encode today, who are you choosing to become tomorrow?